Logan isn't my real name, but it's the one I use when the job demands anonymity. I'm a private investigator, and no, it's not as flashy as the movies make it seem. Most days, it's just hours spent sitting in cars eating week-old fast food, watching people make choices that'll wreck their lives. But sometimes a case lands on my desk that snaps me to attention. This one started with a man named Mark. Mid-40s, wealthy, the kind of guy who could buy his way out of most problems. He walked into my office looking like he'd been sucker punched by his own emotions. His jaw was tight, eyes bloodshot. "She's cheating," he said, voice flat. "I hear that a lot. People hoping I'll prove them wrong." But Mark wasn't hoping, he already knew. He slid an envelope across my desk. Inside were photos of his wife, Clare, a striking blonde in her late 30s, along with her phone number and backed up by $10,000 in cash. No explanation, just evidence and a bribe to dig deeper. Her name's Clare, 16 years married. Find out who he is. He didn't say who because he didn't need to. He'd already put the pieces together. Clare was impressive, the kind of woman who turned heads effortlessly. Tall, sharp cheekbones, always put together. The type who made life look easy. Except she wasn't sneaking off to yoga classes. On day 3, she led me straight to him. A trendy bistro with glass walls and plates of food that cost more than they were worth. And there he was, Peter. Mid-30s, tailored suit, expensive watch, a jawline that screamed bad idea. This wasn't some random fling. Peter was deliberate. When Claire leaned in, laughing at something, he said, her hand lingering on his arm. I took the shot, not because I needed it, but because guys like Mark need to see it. Over the next week, the picture got clearer. Claire's affairs weren't messy, spur-of-the-moment mistakes. They were planned. Hotels, rented apartments, even a quick detour in Peter's car. She didn't just cheat, she was good at it. When I handed Mark the evidence, photos, recordings, texts so explicit they could have been banned. He didn't explode. No rage, no tears, just something dark flickering behind his eyes. "She thinks she's clever," he muttered. That's when I realized this wasn't a man falling apart. It was a man planning. "What about the guy?" he asked, flipping through the photos like a menu. "Peter Graham," I said. VP at a tech company, married, 2 kids, lives in the suburbs, total prick who thinks he's God's gift. Mark gave a cold chuckle. "Let me guess, his wife doesn't know." "Not yet," I said. "But from what I hear, she's not the forgiving type. Her name's Natalie Graham, and here's the kicker. She owned the apartment where Claire and Peter had been meeting. Talk about eating where you." Mark nodded like he was moving chess pieces in his head. "Get in touch with her. Let's make this a team effort." So there I was the next day sitting across from Natalie in a cafe, late 30s, sharp, the kind of woman who ran things. When I showed her the evidence, she didn't cry, didn't scream, just stared at the photos of her husband with another woman in her apartment and said, "What do you need from me?" Mark was right. She wasn't the type to take betrayal lightly. That evening, the 4 of us, me, Mark, Natalie, and her brother Danny, who looked like he could bench press a truck, sat in her living room plotting. Natalie's father was ex-military with rumored underworld ties. Danny was a boxer. Mark brought the legal strategy. I brought the dirt. And Natalie, she brought the fury. "They're meeting at the apartment tomorrow night." I said 7 sharp. "I can rig the place with cameras." Natalie smirked. "Don't bother, I've got my own system. I'll send you the feed." She stood smoothing her skirt. "Here's how this works. Mark, you'll get your divorce. I'll handle Peter. As for your wife," she glanced at me, then back at Mark. "You want her humiliated or ruined?" "Both," Mark said without hesitation. Natalie smiled. "Good, they'll both regret this." The next night, I sat in my car outside the apartment watching a live feed on my laptop. Peter and Claire had no idea they were walking into a trap. They arrived separately. Peter first, then Claire, dressed like they were headed to some high-class event instead of their own downfall. The cameras caught everything. Peter grinning like he'd hit the jackpot. Claire moaning like she was in some cheap porno. I sent the feed to Mark and Natalie. 10 minutes later, Mark's car pulled up. Danny riding shotgun. This wasn't just a confrontation. It was an execution. Mark didn't burst in. That's what I liked about him. He was ice cold, calculated. He knocked 3 deliberate taps. Inside, The feed showed Peter freezing mid-thrust. Claire scrambled for the sheets, pulling them up like a kid caught stealing candy. The door swung open and then the real fun began. Mark's voice was steady as he called out, "Peter." Looking confused, Peter shrugged and slipped on a robe before heading to the door. "Stay here," he told Claire. "I'll get rid of them." When the door opened, Peter barely had time to register Mark's face before a fist the size of a hammer crashed into his jaw. He crumpled to the floor like a sack of bricks. Mark stepped over him without a second glance and strode into the bedroom. Claire froze, clutching the blanket to her chest. "Mark, what the hell are you doing here?" His voice was eerily calm, as if he were asking about the weather. "What am I doing here? Well, I figure if you're going to screw around in another man's wife's apartment, the least I could do was stop by and say hi." Peter groaned from the floor, clutching his face, blood dribbling from his mouth as he spat. "Who the hell are you?" Mark turned to him, expression indifferent. "Me? I'm the husband of the woman you've been screwing in your wife's apartment." "You sack of?" He paused, glancing at Peter's jaw. "How's that jaw, by the way?" By then, Natalie and Danny had stepped inside, lingering in the doorway. Natalie stared at Claire with a mix of disgust and amusement. While Danny's sheer size made the room feel smaller, Peter scrambled to his knees. "Look, I don't know what you think this is." But Mark cut him off. "Oh, I know exactly what this is. You screwing my wife in the house your wife paid for. What I don't know is how you thought this would end." Claire began sobbing. "Mark, please, we can talk about this." "Talk?" He let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "We stopped talking when you decided your yoga instructor wasn't giving you the right kind of stretch." Peter foolishly tried to regain some dignity. Attempting to stand. "You can't just." Mark turned on him. "Sit the hell down." He paced the room, his voice controlled. "Here's how this is going to go. Claire, you're done. Your clothes, your jewelry, everything I bought you gone. Your access to the bank account's cut. You'll get the papers tomorrow. Don't bother contesting them, you'll lose." Then he turned to Peter. "And as for you, your wife has a few words for you." Natalie stepped forward, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. She tossed an envelope onto Peter's lap. "Divorce papers already signed. The house is mine, the kids are mine, the car." She smirked. "Oh, that stays with me, too. You'll be lucky if you can afford an Uber by the time I'm done with you." Peter's face went pale. "Natalie, please. You don't have to." Her voice was ice. "You don't get to beg. Not after what you've done. You thought you could humiliate me." Mark's gaze never left Peter. "I could beat the hell out of you right now. And believe me, I'd enjoy it, but I don't need to because in about 2 days, your life is going to fall apart. Your wife's family, let's just say they're not big fans of adultery. I hear her dad has connections. You might want to invest in a security system." Danny cracked his knuckles. "If he can afford one," Mark added with a smile. Then he turned back to Claire. "And don't think I'm done. Our kids already know what kind of woman you are. They've seen the proof. You can explain yourself to them if they decide to answer your calls." "Good luck with that." Claire's sobbing turned hysterical, but Mark was already walking out. Natalie and Danny followed, leaving Peter and Claire sitting in silence, staring at the wreckage they created. I shut off the live feed and leaned back in my car. Another marriage destroyed, another pair of lives ruined. But hey, at least the job paid well. The fallout hit them like a wrecking ball. Peter's cushy VP job vanished within days thanks to Natalie's father, a retired colonel with powerful friends. His reputation was shredded and the once respected Grahams became the neighborhood joke. Claire fared no better. Mark froze her out of their accounts, leaving her with barely enough for gas money. Their kids wanted nothing to do with her. Last I heard, she was crashing with her sister, who wasn't thrilled about the arrangement. Mark, on the other hand, moved on with quiet efficiency. A week later, he stopped by my office to pick up the rest of the recordings. He looked lighter, like a man who'd finally dropped a weight he didn't realize he was carrying. "Everything go as planned?" I asked, handing him the USB drive. He smirked better. "Claire's already begging for a second chance, but I blocked her number. The kids are staying with me, which is a win. And Natalie," he chuckled. "Let's just say she's got her own revenge campaign going. That poor bastard Peter won't know what hit him. Think she should go easy on him?" I joked. Mark shook his head. "Not a chance. That woman's a shark. He turned to leave but paused at the door. You ever wonder why people do this all the time? Haven't figured it out yet? I admitted. He gave a small nod. Let me know if you do. Then he was gone. People like Mark stick with me, not because of the drama or the money, but because of what they represent. He wasn't perfect, but he handled betrayal with precision, control, and a cold dose of reality. Claire and Peter, they'll survive, but their lives will never be the same. Cheaters always think they're invincible, that their lives will hold and their actions won't have consequences. But when the walls cave in, and they always do, they realize too late that the price of their fun is steep. As for me, I poured myself a scotch that night and reflected on another job well done. Here's the thing about being a pie. You see the worst in people every day. But you also see the truth. And the truth, it's messy, ugly, and oddly satisfying. If there's one lesson I've learned, it's,